Tonight, David C. is coming before us to tell his story once again at NABA. His home group is a Triangle Saturday morning men's group. April 30th, 2007, I walked in the doors of AA for the very first time, and it was at this speaker meeting, and David was at the podium that night. I'm going to steal maybe one thing that he may be sharing with you later. He looked familiar. And, you know, I always heard later that turning points for people when they decided to surrender, to accept the program, is they would hear in a speaker meeting somebody telling their story, that they were in that person's story. Even though they weren't, they just felt that bond and connection. In David's case, I was in his story. I won't belabor the fact, but it was a God thing. And now David's back. I'm so glad to welcome him. Give them a big hand, please.
My name is Dave Crawford, and I am an alcoholic. My sponsor is Dean Anderson of Saturday Morning Men's Group at Triangle. My sobriety date is September 6, 1996. And I tell you, I'm really tired, and I'm kind of nervous. But I'm not hungry, and I'm surely not alone, and I'm not angry. I'm very grateful to be here, grateful to be sober. I walked in here and saw Tim, told my story, and I really didn't recognize him when he walked up to me because, for one thing, he couldn't put together a full sentence, and I'm not kidding around. He was very uncomfortable and very, he was in bad shape. And he told me his name, and about over 40 years ago, he dated my sister in high school, and I was regularly hitting him up for money, beer, or pot, or a ride to get beer or pot, and he helped me out sometimes. And so I returned the favor and helped him out. I've had an interesting several days. I came into AA about 18 years ago. I relapsed at about 13 months since my sobriety date of 1996. I came in 95. But at that time, my brother and his since deceased wife were in the process of running me down because I was in real bad shape. And not soon thereafter, they had a son. And on Saturday morning, me and my brother, kind of an ambush intervention, put him on a plane and flew to Kirbyville, Missouri via Chicago. And I got back into Atlanta and went to sleep at about 3:30 and got up at 7 and went to work all day. A job I'm grateful to have that I would have never had if I hadn't gotten sober. And a kind of job that I never thought I would do. I would want to do or be successful at or enjoy doing. And it's all, I attribute it all to God and, you know, AA. So I'm a little tired, and not only did I acquire some peculiar mental twist in my story, I probably sustained some brain damage as well, so my timelines might be a little off and I might be jumping back and forth. But I grew up in a good home. My parents did all they could to keep us on the north side of Atlanta in the interest of keeping us out of trouble in a nice environment, and pretty much every one of us ran that into the ground. And when I met Tim, you know, probably about 3 years before that, the first beer I drank was me and a kid down the street stole from a neighbor's garage, and really didn't like the taste. Kind of like the way it made me feel. I really didn't get drunk, got a little buzz on, but I got to tell you, I got just as big a charge out of stealing that beer as I did as drinking it. So there was some other stuff going on. I was defiant and belligerent, and I liked getting over. And that really didn't work out real well for me in the long term. So that started, I was 13, I was 11 years old when that started. And not soon after, I started smoking weed. I know this is an AA meeting, but alcohol was always there with all kinds of other stuff. But I drank sporadically in high school when I could get away with it, when I could get a hold of it, and it progressed. It's amazing. I graduated from high school, but thanks to the Georgia school system, I graduated a quarter early, and with a lot of F's on my report card, and proceeded to get a job. My dad got me a job, and then I got a job. Well, actually, I got a job in high school at a bar in Sandy Springs. If any of you are natives, it was a bar called Xanadu, and it was one of the first discos in Atlanta. And I was enamored with that lifestyle. I loved it. I was 16 years old, bussing tables, and at 18, they made me a bar back, and I just thought there couldn't be anything better. But all these people that cared about me convinced me that going to college would be a better decision against my better judgment. And I went to college and proceeded to drink my way out of college. Came back to Atlanta, got a job at a restaurant out in Roswell, and then I got a job at TGI Fridays in the early 80s, and was actually a good employee. And my drinking and other things progressed, and it progressed exponentially, and more other substances were involved, and DUIs, dysfunctional, sick relationships, and for a good period of time, I had a lot of fun. Interspersed with periods of knowing. I mean, I got to tell you guys, for me, I knew the way that I drank and the way that I liked to get high, that something was the matter with it. Deep down inside, my dad was an alcoholic, his brother was an alcoholic, both my grandparents were alcoholics. And I knew and heard these stories, and I turned away and denied that, and denied that I was going to be that person, but slowly but surely I was turning into that and worse. And so, that was the early 80s when I was working at Fridays, and it was my only geographical. They wanted me to go into management, and it sounded too much like hard work to me. And so a guy convinced me to come down to Florida that was at the early, he was one of the first employees at Fridays, and we went down to Florida, and it was just like a Fridays with a dance floor and a yacht harbor, and I thought that I could go down there and clean up my act. And I did for about a month, and I fell right into that South Florida lifestyle, and you can probably imagine what that meant. And I bounced around down there. It was really under false pretenses. They brought me down there. These guys had bought a restaurant, and they purposely ran it into the ground. It was a money thing, and I was down there, and the people I moved down there with moved to Tampa, and I was sitting in Clearwater Beach, and I got a job tending bar. It was easy for me to do. I was good at it, and you can always, people are always looking for a bartender, so I did that. Sold suntan lotion on the beach, and just did the bounce around thing in Florida, and was unemployed, and went back to Atlanta, moved in for my parents, got a job tending bar, Cafe 290 in Sandy Springs, and progressively made my way south. Ended up in underground Atlanta. My drinking was getting worse. I was by the time I was working in underground Atlanta, I was a habitual violator. I'd had 3 DUIs, and the state took my license for 5 years. And I didn't drive after that for 8 years. I got sober during that time. At the 5-year time that I could have gotten my driver's license back, I had enough, I don't know if you'd call it honesty, but I had enough clarity to know that there's no way I could sit through a DUI class, much less drive again, without getting a DUI instantly. So I just chose not to drive. I took cabs everywhere, and I convinced myself that was smart. And brushes with the law, wrecking vehicles. I won't get into the long version of the story because I want to get sober here. But I rolled a car off of 400, passed out at the wheel at this is back in the 80s, when if you got past the Abernathy Drive on 400 and it was pretty dark, I mean, there wasn't a lot of traffic out there. And I'd been drinking all night, dropped a guy off in Buckhead, and I was staying at my parents'. I was about, 22 years old. And I passed out at the wheel, and I woke up, and there's trees all around me, and I thought I just drifted into the woods. But I had hit a guardrail and flipped my car end over end down a 40-foot embankment. Woke up, walked up the embankment. First guy that picked me up, I stuck at my thumb. Guy picked me up, took me home, went into my parents' house, went to sleep. My mother called up in the morning. She goes, "Where's your car?" And I, did some blackout management. And oh yeah, and I lied, because that's what I did. When I didn't know what to say, I lied. And I said I left it at work. I called my sister, and after 3 passes up and down 400, we saw some little tire tracks, and the car was totaled. I went to work that night at Fridays. I was waiting tables at the time, and I got off work and feigned that my car had been stolen. And we made an insurance report, and the cops found my car a month later, not down at that embankment. Somebody with a record found my car, pulled it off the highway, and took it out to Alpharetta, which was country then, and stripped it. So, I have stories like that ad infinitum. I went over the top of riding a bicycle drunk down Piedmont and broadside of the car, running a red light after I shot a bird at somebody for honking at me. And so, I was brilliant. But I was working in underground. I'd started getting fired from these bartending jobs, and I was a thief, and nobody ever caught me stealing. They suspected that I did, but I was getting fired for being too drunk on the job. And the final job I got fired from was a guy that's in recovery now, and that's a whole other story in itself, that he fired me, and that was in like 1993. And that's when I got on the express elevator to the bottom, and because I started selling cocaine, and not soon thereafter I started smoking a lot of cocaine, and I didn't work for a year and a half, and I put everything and anything I could into me, and it's a flat out miracle I got sober. People around me, even people that drank with me, were like, "Man, you need help," and that didn't get my attention. What got my attention is I got real sick, physically ill. I couldn't hold down a glass of water, much less a drink. And through a bunch of occurrences, my brother played an integral part in that. My parents, they confronted me and offered to send me, go get evaluated, go to detox. And I was, no. I'm a grown man. I got this. I was 37 years old. And I was, wet in the bed, and I was dying. Turns out, so finally, I had a brief moment of clarity, and I called my parents. I said, 37 years old, Mommy, I'll go to treatment. And so she goes, "Okay, I'll come and get you." It was like Thursday. I said, "No, Tuesday." And another of the countless miracles, I made it to Tuesday. And for some reason, I had a plan that I probably wasn't going to go on Tuesday, but for some reason it happened on Tuesday. I checked into treatment at Ridgeview. They couldn't stabilize me. I was there in detox for 7 days. And if you asked me a month later how long I'd been there, I thought I'd been there 2 days. I was there for 7 days. They couldn't stabilize me. I was throwing up. I had diarrhea. My blood pressure was all over the place. I couldn't hold down food. So finally, after 7 days, they said, "You need to go. You need hospitalization." So I went to Georgia Baptist, which is now Atlanta Medical, and I was there for 5 days. And I had bleeding ulcers, a lacerated esophagus, esophagitis, pancreatitis, and gastritis. And it's a miracle. I don't know if you know much about esophagitis or a lacerated esophagus. If you're in a hospital and you rupture your esophagus, I don't care if you're surrounded by physicians, you can bleed out in about 2 minutes. And I was throwing up blood on a regular basis. And in my addled mind, I convinced myself that I had a stomach virus. That it wasn't that bad. I just ate something bad. And so Ridgeview had recommended a place in Florida, and I'd been in hospitalized either at detox or the hospital for over almost 13 days. I flew down to Florida and checked into a great treatment center that I am so grateful for. I'm all about getting sober with a white chip. I'm glad I had supervision and some guidance, because I needed a lot of help. I was really sick, not just physically, but I was so ill-equipped and so immature and so without a clue. And I checked into treatment there. They gave me a urine test, and I tested positive for cocaine 13 days after using it, which they were impressed with, and they thought I was lying. And once again, I was so far gone, I wasn't sure if I had. They thought maybe, they asked me, "Did you use?" And I was thinking, had I? But I'd been supervised, but I was so, my liver was, it was pooled in my liver. Anyway, they believed me, and I stayed there for 2 months, and I was one of the older guys there. I was 37 years old, and it was a great place. They supported AA. We didn't work any steps in treatment. They told us, we encourage you to go to AA. We encourage you to get a big book. We encourage you to get a sponsor, because if not, you can just save up your money for another treatment or a funeral. And they go, because if you don't get into AA, you ain't got a chance. And and I had a great counselor that he knew me. He cut right to me. He was all he knew how to do was be a counselor. He got sober at 17 in Rayford Prison. And when he went into Rayford Prison, it's a pretty rough state prison in Florida, he was the youngest male inmate in the Rayford prison system. And he got sober in prison, and he'd been sober for 14 years. And unfortunately, from what I understand, he's using today. But I stayed in touch with him through treatment. But I was down there, and I was compliant, but I really wasn't into. I was just saying what they wanted to hear. I wanted to get out of there, and so at 60 days, I opted out against their medical advice, and I had to sit through. A co-ed group on a Sunday night. It was our community group, and it was 2 hours long, and I had to just sit there, and the majority of people told me why I wasn't going to make it. And one of the reasons was I wanted to get out, was pride. My mom my mom sold real estate, wasn't a big Atlanta real estate agent, but she'd had a pretty successful year, and she paid for my treatment out of her pocket, and I hated that. And I wanted to get out of there, and I wanted to get back to my life in Atlanta. And I had no life in Atlanta. And I'd left a girl who was with me through the last 6 months. That it was the sickest relationship I've ever been in. She weighed 87 pounds when I went to treatment. She spent a lot of time in the window and looking for people, and so I opted out. And it was at night, and it was 8 o'clock at night when that group was over, and we lived about 15 minutes from the treatment facility. So I go trucking out there to get on the van, and my counselor said, "Dave, you've opted out to no longer be a part of this recovery community. You can't use our facilities." And I had gotten a job. It was in August, and I landscaped in South Florida in August with these Haitian guys that were, man, they were the model of gratitude and hard work. And it was a great detox. They didn't think I'd make it. Be the middle of the day, and the foreman would go, "Dave, are you okay?" I mean, there was demons coming out of me, but it was good. It was what I needed, and I'd saved a little bit of money. And he said, "You need to find your own way back to the facility, to the resident facility, and when you get there, in fact, you can't go in the apartment because you've chosen not to be a member of this community." And I was incensed. I thought it was mean. I thought it was derogatory. But today I look back at it and say, this is a succession of great lessons that I got there, and I've continued to get in recovery. So I got a cab. I went back there. I packed my bags. By then it was about 9 o'clock. I was in South Florida. I was in Delray Beach, and I took a cab to West Palm Beach Airport, and I couldn't get a flight out that night. And so there I was in West Palm Beach Airport, and 2 months off a pretty serious smoking cocaine and drinking, 27-year run, and I was scared to death. And but what I'd learned was to pray. I learned to pray. There was a guy that my roommate in treatment, and when I first got there, this guy would get down on his knees and pray. And I would get down on my knees, and I'd stay down until he got up. And I'd say, only prayer I knew, only way I knew how to pray was I said the Lord's Prayer over and over again. And one of the prayers I worked in was, God, help me so one day I might help somebody else. And then through that, my prayer life has grown, and my spiritual life has grown. And but anyway, I got a hotel. I made a reservation for the next morning, and so there I was, 2 months abstinent, because I surely wasn't sober. I was running on will and pride and fear, and a little bit of hope, which isn't a good recipe. And I got down on my knees and I prayed that I'd make it through the night, because at the end of that was my thing. I would get what I wanted to do, and I would lock down in a hotel room until I had to come out and get more of what I wanted to do. And so there I was in South Florida. Got on that plane the next morning, flew into Atlanta. That girl was waiting for me at the train station right behind the Gold Club, at the last bar I'd worked at, right across the street from there, the Sandbar. And I was pretty uncomfortable, and I stayed with my parents and hung out with her for about 3 days. She'd remained abstinent while I was gone, but I was encouraged not to do that when I left, and I took that advice about 3 days after getting back. And my parents lived right across the street from 8111, and my primary counselor sat on the wall with me outside that apartment, and he said a couple of things to me. He said, Dave, I would rather you go back. I would rather put you on a plane, send you to New York City, and drop you in the middle of Greenwich Village and send you back to Atlanta, because all you have is a history of knowing the wrong people and the wrong places in Atlanta. He goes, so unless you get back to Atlanta and you jump into AA feet first, into meetings in the book, he goes, I don't think you're going to make it. And I wanted to prove him wrong. So that's what I did. I stayed with my parents, and they lived right across the street from 8111, and I went to no less than 3 meetings a day. And AA is not a job service, but I would raise my hand, and I would say, my name's Dave. I just got out of treatment. I need a sponsor, and I need a job. And within a week, I had a sponsor. Within 2 weeks, I had a job. And this is something funny too. First 5:45 meeting I went to, I was looking around, and I recognized a lot of people. And I got up after the meeting, and they recognized me. And we figured out, because I attended bar for 17 years in Atlanta, from Roswell to Underground Atlanta, and I was on, and I didn't, until the end, I didn't do a lot of drinking alone. I was on one side of the bar or the other, and I spent all my money out drinking and on other things. And a lot of people, and I still see people come in today, not only that I went to high school with, but people that I knew from the bar business. And in my self-righteous pride and my ego, I'd see people and they go, hey man, I hadn't seen you in a while, people that I knew in the bar business. And I said, yeah, well, I got sober. And they go, yeah, you needed to. And that would hurt my pride. I am just so grateful for that today, because recently, I've had a guy call me and said, man, I heard you got sober. Are you still sober? And I said, yeah. I said, man, you were pretty screwed up. I said, yeah, I was. And they've asked me for help, and that's a gift. So I got a job, and I was working for pretty just a little above minimum wage, and I worked hard, and I was there for about 9 months, and I wanted another job, and I wanted to make a little more money, and I answered an ad in the paper to drive a limo. And this is so funny, because I hadn't driven. I got my license back right after I got back to Atlanta. I had to go to DUI school, and I got my license back, and I saved a little money, bought a used car, and this was right before about 3 months before the Olympics. And these guys called me, and I went to my sponsor, and I was writing, my resume, or filling out the application, and I bar, and then this gap in my employment of 2 years, and I wanted to fill it in. And he said, don't. And he said, just be honest. And he didn't tell me how to be honest. He said, just be honest. And so they interviewed me, and I interviewed good. And the guy goes, I really like you, and I like your background, you know, because I'd had some management experience, but mostly bartending. And actually, it was pretty. I held some jobs. I worked at Fridays for 5 years. I worked at Embers for 3 years. I worked at Groundhog for 2 years. And I mean, I could hold a job. I was good at what I did. And he goes, but we got this 2-year gap between now and then. He goes, well, what's up with that? And I wanted to lie. I looked at the floor, and I looked up, and I looked him in the eye, and I said, I had a serious drug and alcohol problem, and I was way off track, and I went to rehab, and I've been sober for 10 months, and recovery's at the center point of my life. And he was like, oh, well, you know, and this is to drive, you know, and he goes, I appreciate your honesty. We'll get back with you. And I thought, oh, yeah, you will. And they did. And I got hired, and I ended up I worked for that company for 5 years, drove through the Olympics, drove out of Chateau Line, this had a very interesting time. I also relapsed. But it was, I was an exemplary employee. I had a lot of fun. And I met a lot of neat people and learned some things. But what happened was, I took that job, I started, and I thought I'd made a bad decision. We didn't have any work, and you know, the Olympics were just getting off the ground, and they started, and we were nonstop busy. And at that time, I was going to at least 5-6 meetings a week, if not 7, some 2, you know, a couple of times a day. And I had a sponsor, and I still talk to my counselor in Florida on a regular basis. And I mean, I'm driving Sugar Ray Leonard and Natalie Cole and all kinds of people. Jack Welch, CEO of General Electric. I drove the board of General Electric around, went to all these events, and I was calling people and, you know, calling my counselor and going, man, I'm sitting on the front row watching the Dream Team. He'd go, that's great, Dave. When was the last time you went to a meeting? I went, well, man, I'm watching the Dream Team. And he's like, go to a meeting. My sponsor was saying the same thing. And I was also driving around in a big fat Cadillac. I didn't drive a stretch much. A Cadillac sedan, brand new Cadillac. They'd let me take it home at night. I'm driving up to meetings, you know, 11 months sober. Hey, man, sobriety's great. But I will say I had enough honesty, if you will, to say it's not my car. It's a work car. But I was driving to go places, taking routes that I had no business taking, and just checking it out, having a look. And what I was doing was going insane, and I was fantasizing about getting high. And at 11 months sober, I was afraid if I told you guys that, you'd think I was crazy. And you'd think I was some kind of drug addict. Or an alcoholic. And so I kept it to myself. And I really, in my delusion, I thought, man, I'm not doing it. It's okay to just think about it. And I was insane. I mean, they say the thought precedes the action a long time, and for me it was about a good month and a half before I actually took the action. I made it through the Olympics. I picked up a year. I hadn't done it, and at 13 months, I mean, I audibly said, F it. Audibly. I was on my way to a meeting, and I just went, F it, and I went and did what I did. And the scary part was I didn't tell anybody. I did it once and didn't tell anybody for 6 months. And that 6 months was misery. I'd be on my way to a meeting. Man, you're going to come clean tonight. Somebody'd share something at a meeting. Raise your hand, raise your hand. No. I don't have to tell myself. I'm back. It's all good. I don't suggest trying that. It was horrible. And so I went to Rock Eagle. Went to a Rock Eagle and didn't come clean on this. And then the next Rock Eagle was 6 months later, and it was coming up on what should have been my second birthday, and I knew I couldn't carry that lie. So I pulled over Bill Sanders, and I said, Bill, this is what, and at the time, Bill was my sponsor. And I said, this is what's going on. He goes, I knew something was up. I was hoping it wasn't that, but I knew something was going on. So I went back, and what he had me do was go to all the meetings that I was a regular at and tell them myself. Because, I've sponsored guys that have had a slip or I really don't believe in that word. You drank because you wanted to. You didn't slip. And, oops, you know. And he had me go to all the meetings I was a regular at and tell on myself. And, you know, nobody beat me up. I just said, man, thanks for being honest and glad you're back. And I just carried on. And during that time, I met a girl, in fact, at this clubhouse, and we got married for all the wrong reasons. And we were married for 6 years. It was a pretty ugly divorce, and I learned some lessons there. I've had some wreckage in sobriety, you guys. I mean, I went through that divorce. I quit driving the limo and went to work for an old friend of mine, a guy who I actually taught how to tin bar about 30 years ago, and he had a recruiting business, an executive recruiting business, and I went to work for him. I was a contract recruiter, independent contractor, 100% commission. And I did that for 8 years. And my wife at the time was working a regular job, and we were going to live on her salary, and hopefully the commissions would start coming in. And about when the commissions started coming in, she started getting arrested for forging scripts, and I chose not to pay my taxes. And I was an S corporation, and that was a nightmare. That monkey rode on my back. I just took care of that about 2 years ago. And through a guy in the program that guided me through, held my hand, and I'm right with the IRS. And I had this big monster fear thing going on in my head, and I went to somebody that knew what they were doing and had a program of action, and they told me exactly what to do. I had to write a lot of stuff down, and I had to be accountable for my actions and deal with the consequences. And my current about 3 years ago, I serendipitously, providentially, in my mind, ran into a girl that I went to high school with that certainly wouldn't have hung out with me in high school. And we got married July 22nd last year. And she helped me a lot in that. She's helped me a lot in a lot of ways. She's not one of us, but she is 100% Al-Anon, and we're learning a lot of life lessons together. And I'm learning how to be a true partner, and it's not easy. And we're getting some help there too. But so that was, I had that job, and there was some wreckage there. And during the time when I was driving the limo, my father, who I had a lot of issues with, had a massive stroke, and I lived right down the street from my mother, and I was the first person she called, and which was about face. My brother's very scriptural, very religious, and he says the first shall be last and the last shall be first, and that's what that was to him, because my mom called me, and I got over there to the house and got him. She'd gotten up real early and wondered why he didn't get up from bed, but he'd had a stroke, and they didn't think he'd live. And man, there's a lot of history there. My dad, right after I came home from treatment, we did an intervention on my dad, and he went to Peachford, and my dad was a brilliant man, was a Yale-educated architect, and just a 100% alcoholic, and I love him and I miss him. But what happened was he went, they didn't think he'd make it, then they didn't think he'd talk again, and then they said no way he'd walk again, and he talked a little bit and walked a little bit, and my mother kept him at home for 2.5 years, and I helped a lot. And I wasn't always the best helper. I'd get angry with him. But I was able to be there. I was able to show up. And also during this time, before that happened, I went back to college for a bit. I still haven't graduated, but in that process, I had to get my transcripts from Sandy Springs High School, and I thought I'd done really bad. I'd done really, really bad. And I mean, I had all kinds of F's and D's, and it's amazing that West Georgia College let me in, but they did. And, that was about 2.5 years. So I had a little college, but I ended up going to DeKalb, and I took math, and I went 2 quarters, and I took 2 algebra classes, and the first algebra class I took, the first quarter was, I was just so lost because I avoided math like the plague. My father was an architect, and he loved numbers. Before he started doing crossword puzzles, he would sit around with a yellow legal pad and square out numbers just for grins, Andy was not, so he was a weird alcoholic, and so when I'd go to him in high school and be high and I'd ask for help in math, he'd get out the legal pad and he goes, "Are you following me?" And I go, "No." And he'd go, "Well, where did I lose you?" I go, "When your pencil hit the paper," and we'd get in a fight, and that worked out, So I switched all my classes to a general diploma so I could take as little math as possible. So I go back to college. I sit in this math class, and I swear to God, I was this close to crying. I went out in the hall, and I called my sponsor. I said, "There's no way, man. There's no way. I'll never be able to do this." And he goes, "Man, I don't want to hear it." He goes, get some help. And so I got some free tutoring at the library, and I needed a lot of help. And I used every resource I had. I sat on the front row. I was the oldest student in the class. I sat on the front row. I'd go to the teacher after school, and then finally my mom goes, "Why don't you get your dad to help you?" I went, "Oh yeah, that's always worked out well." And when I got sober, I made amends to my dad, and I'd been sober about 4 or 5 years when this was going on, and I made amends to my dad, and I still had I wasn't at peace with stuff, but my sponsor encouraged me to make amends to my father and bite my tongue when I was done. And that was good advice, because when I got done making my amends, he told me some stuff I'd left out about what a horrible son I'd been. And I think he was actually drinking at the time, but that doesn't matter. I did my part on the instruction of my sponsor. And so I did ask my dad, and he helped me a lot. And sitting there at their dining room table like it was, 35 years before, but he wasn't high and I wasn't high. And he made amends to me, and I didn't need him anymore. I didn't want him, I didn't need him. I appreciated him, but I didn't need him. I said, "Thanks a lot, you don't have to do that." Because I'd learned how to love my dad regardless of what had happened. And a lot of it was, a lot of what had happened, he did the best he could. I'm of the mind, and I'm still dealing with family stuff, believe me. But I'm of the mind. My parents didn't get together and say, "Honey, I love you, let's have some kids," and just abuse them and be mean to them. I mean, some people do have those parents. I didn't. My parents did the best they could, and they sacrificed a lot to do what they could for me. And I was a horrible child. I lied and stole and was crazy and caused them a lot of heartbreak and worry. And I've made up for that a little bit, just a little bit. And I was able to be there for my dad. 2.5 years into that, he had that stroke, and he lived for 7 years. When we got to the emergency room, my mom pulled me over, and after things calmed down a little bit, and she goes, "There was a time I would have called everybody else and then assigned somebody to track you down and wonder if you would have showed up or not. And I called you first." And I'm not proud of that. I'm grateful that it happened. And about 2.5 years after that, my mom was called me. She'd gone in for a hemoglobin count, and this is my mom. She was about 78, something like that, 77 at the time. And they called her back, and they go, "There must have been a mistake. Your hemoglobin count is like 8, and it's supposed to be like 13. And they say if it's below 10, you have a splitting headache, or you can't get out of bed, or both." And they said there must have been a mistake, so you need to come back in here. And it was 8, and she was hemorrhaging somewhere. And they ask her, they go, "Do you feel okay?" She goes, "Well, I'm a little tired." And that's my mom's now 83 and still going 100 miles an hour. She's somewhat physically challenged, but she's sharp as a tack and at times mean as a snake. And so I went back to the hospital with her. They gave her another test, and they detected something in her colon. Gave her colonoscopy the next morning, and the guy pulled me over. He goes, I've been doing this. He goes, I've been doing this for 30 years. He goes, am I positive that's cancer? And he goes, no, but I'm 99.9% sure, and she needs to go into surgery as soon as possible. So she did, and it was all this was like, I don't know, about 6 years ago. My father passed away about 3. But they went in, it was high right side, something I've learned more about that kind of stuff than I really care to know. But that's good, because they just snipped off upper colon and reattached it to her stomach, and she's been cancer-free since. But during that period, we made the decision as a family, me and my sisters and my brother, to put my dad at assisted living. Because when she was in the hospital, I stayed at her house with my dad for 10 days, and I was like astounded what she'd been doing. Made me appreciate how she took care of him. So we put him in assisted living and moved him around, and I had some experience there that wasn't pleasant. If you're not there every day, you're not getting what you pay for, was my experience. And he passed away about 3 years ago. But when he passed away, I was close by again. As a matter of fact, I was getting ready to go. I was single at the time. I was getting ready to go to the beach with my mother and a friend of hers at Hilton Head. And I was at Costco picking up last-minute supplies, and she called me, and she goes, you better get over here, because we'd signed a DNI, and he'd had, do not resort, whatever, DNR, DUI, DNI, DNR. I get them confused. Because he'd had some bouts to where, they were just propping him back up, and he'd crash, and they'd prop him back up. So she said, you better get over here, it's not good. And so I got over there, and my sister was there, my niece was there, my dad was there, my mom was there, and the hospice nurse. And he was on his way out. And he'd been in VA about 3 months before that. And, I made my amends more, when we talked more than a few times, and he didn't talk much toward the end, and I was his best translator for some reason. I could figure out what he wanted by pointing and deciphering what he was saying. But we were all gathered around, and my hand was on his chest, and he passed away. And I had some peace with it. I mean, it wasn't, it was hard. And my sister's her and her daughter are pretty histrionic, if you will, pretty vocal, and they were wailing, and my mom was crying, and then he passed, and my mom's pastor got there, and we stood around, and my sister was carrying on, and we stood around him in a circle and said a prayer and said goodbye, and I was kind of anxious, and my sister was really kind of getting on my nerves, to tell you the truth. God bless her. But then I had the most God-present moment I've had in my sobriety. I felt the presence of God like I've never felt it before or after, and it was life affirming. It was faith affirming for me, and it happened at my father's passing. To me, is pretty rich, and I'm grateful for it. And I'm grateful that I was sober, and I was allowed to be of help to my family, which I wasn't beforehand. And we're running out of time. I want to say one thing. What I was thinking about on the way down here, I called my brother. He works at FedEx at night, and I said, I'm not trying to be funny, but when you were reeling me in, did you think, 17 years later, I would be the go-to guy to help get your son into treatment? He said, no, really didn't think about that. But I tell you what, I was worn out when I got back in last night, and I was worn out at work. But I work a job that I'm an exemplary employee today, and it's a job that I never would have wanted. I always avoided, because it's very structured, it's very corporate. And believe me, when I came in, I did not look like this. I looked like a raccoon, because I didn't sleep a lot in the 80s. And I had hair down on my neck, and I was puffy, and And I wanted nothing to do with somebody that was clear-eyed and had a tie on. I don't wear a tie at work, but I do wear a tie at the podium because that's how I was taught. That you show the newcomer that you can clean up and you respect the podium. And I respect AA, and I'm just so grateful. But when I was driving down here, I was thinking, man, I'm worn out. But man, I tell you, I pushed myself 10 times as hard as this. I would run myself into the ground to do what I did. I mean, it made this look like nothing. Nothing. I mean, I'm just internally bleeding and still going at it and thinking, not a big deal. So I want to read a couple of things. This is what my life was. My whole life, this is from Dr. Bob's story on page 172. My whole life seemed to be centered around doing what I wanted to do without regards for the rights, wishes, or privileges of anyone else, a state of mind which became more and more predominant as the years passed. That was me. It was me. It was all about me. I was thinking about this on the way down here too. You guys told me to find something I enjoy, and I am an avid fisherman to the point of obsession, and sometimes I'm selfish about it. That I will discount other things like my wife. One more cast, honey. But I don't think it's near as bad as doing what I did. You know, she understands most of the time. And this is my life. I spent a great deal of time passing on this is from Dr. Bob's story on page 180 and 181. I spent a great deal of time passing on what I learned to those who want it and need it badly. I do it for 4 reasons. Number 1 is sense of duty. Number 2, it is a pleasure. Number 3, because in so doing, I am paying my debt to the man who took time to pass it on to me. Number 4, because every time I do it, I take out a little more insurance for myself against a possible slip. Unlike most of our crowd, I did not get over my craving for liquor during the first 2.5 years. It was almost always with me, but at no time have I been anywhere near yielding. I used to get terribly upset when I saw my friends drink and knew I could not. But I schooled myself to believe that though I once had the same privilege, I had abused it so frightfully that it was withdrawn. So it doesn't behoove me to squawk about it, for after all, nobody ever had to throw me down and pour liquor down my throat. If you think you are an atheist, an agnostic, a skeptic, or have any form of intellectual pride which keeps you from accepting what is in this book, I still feel sorry for you. If you still think you are strong enough to beat the game alone, that's your affair. But if you really and truly want to quit drinking liquor for good and all, and sincerely feel that you must have some help, we know that we have an answer for you. Here you go. It never fails if you go about it with one half the zeal you have been in the habit of showing where you were getting another drink. Your Heavenly Father will never let you down. And, you know, there's a lot of people that kind of speak against that, man. You know, go at it like you did drinking. And, man, that's unhealthy. I mean, I have a job, I have a life, I have a wife, and I have a life outside of AA. Most of my social life, 95% of my social life with people in the program. I mean, why would you do anything else, is my view. I mean, I really don't like hanging out with people that are spitting on me and telling me the same joke 3 times in a row. And when I told you where I was when I got to that hotel room in West Palm Beach 2 months before, where I was I mean, I would lock down a hotel room with lots of things to ingest, and, you know, for 3-4 days at a time. Now, since I've been sober, I haven't locked myself in a hotel room with a big book and an AA phone list and just gotten busy. I don't think that'd be healthy. You know, quit eating. Hey, man, well, how about page 180? Bring me something to eat. But that's my story. And I really appreciate you having me here tonight. And if you don't have, I tell you, I heard Earl Hightower say this about sponsorship. Get one, use one, be one. Get in literature meetings. Work the steps. Go to meetings. Get into literature meetings. Go to speaker meetings. Work the steps with somebody that's worked the steps, that has a sponsor who has a sponsor. Thank you.
First I slept and then I crept to a hope-filled dream. You rescued me, and finally, waking there I see. I look into love's window for a soul that's meant for me. Takes me where the promises are real. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slow, we get just what we need. On a broad highway, stride for stride, we walk eternally. I look into love's window for a heart that beats for me. Takes me where the promises are real. And I always long for something that